books, newspapers, magazines, blogs, and news feeds.
Of these things, how are you reading?
And Android tablets.
We should probably move to the
Yeah,
next
yeah.
thing pretty soon.
Yep, so there are Android tablets that are kind of all over the place now. It looks like Apple just beat them in price with their new one, so we'll see what happens with that. In terms of organizations that are actually using ebooks now, I thought this was a fun one. They came through Book Brewer. It's talk about an ultra niche news service. It's Defense Standard Magazine. Never heard of it because you're not in the target demographic, but they're apparently doing very well, and they're trying to get content available for soldiers in the go. So they're really going after military people. They publish through us, and then they're promoting it on their website. We mentioned Mark Scott Nash with his hiking guide. I thought that was a really great example. ProPublica talked about a little bit. This is like the worst thing in the slide, but it was Richard Toffel talking about how he thinks Amazon singles are great because there are lots of stories that are 30,000 words or less, and they now make economic sense to publish. The truth is, you can do that with or without Amazon singles, and I'd say publish them as
Why are
ebooks.
they forcing them to sell free ebooks?
I don't know. I thought that was really.
Because it's available
I thought that was really
free on
lame
their
of Amazon.
website.
Yeah, yeah, that's probably what it is.
There's an even piece on this
Okay.
from the end of February.
So I want to wrap up real quickly here. What are people buying right now? And this is just anecdotally what we're seeing. We see a lot of how-to content that has a very niche focus. Personal stories by people who overcame some major kind of crisis are really very popular. So it's kind of biography, self-help type stuff. Well-written novels, and then I just have to say, yes, sex is selling too. They call it erotica in the book industry, and a whole other topic, which we'll get into later. But if you can figure out how to do some kind of like investigation into some kind of sex type thing.
Football into it. If we could just
And football, yeah. And I'd say also, don't forget print. So we talked about this whole time about ebooks. What I'm working on right now, and the reason I wasn't sure if I'd be able to make it in today, this morning, is that for the first time we're going to allow people who have ebooks to turn them into printed books that are print on demand. We'll take their EPUB file, and 36 hours later, they will get a printed book that's automatically laid out, sent to them by FedEx, and it'll only cost $6 per copy. And we call those P-books.
Now, how do bookstores and things react to those print on demand? They don't like them, right? Because they can't.
No, they love it. Actually, well, on their websites, they're selling tons of print on demand, but they're trying to drive the price down even further. I think the local bookstores, like Boulder Bookstore, it's a little bit harder for them, but they're also kind of interested in this. I bring up the print on demand because it really is digital content. You just don't think of it that way. And we found that 90% of the people who asked us to publish ebooks for them wanted to print books. So basically, this is where it all comes full circle back to print casting. And then we talked about enhanced books. I actually had a video of it. So there's a lot more to come. So anyways, if you have any questions, there's my information. I'd be happy to.
Okay. I guess next, and let me just set up real fast. Alrighty, and we're kind of slowly losing people, but okay. So I'll do a brief little talk about membership models, and let's see, okay, Matt's probably coming back. Matt and another graduate student here, Danny Randa, who I think had to leave, have been working with me as part of the Digital Media Test Kitchen on looking at better business models for memberships. And we're actually focusing on a couple of things, both on investigative news and on collegiate media. So, let's see, I'm going to just speed things along because I'm going to skip that. Well, actually, let me briefly talk about this. There's a guy named Jeremy Adams Smith who is a 2010-2011 Knight Fellow, and he just came out with a really interesting survey that's very pertinent to this group. And he looked at, okay, how are people funding meaningful journalism? And this quote here is probably not terribly surprising given what we talked about today, which is that we're quite dependent on grants and donations. So this chart is not terribly encouraging. So the green bar is institutional grants of all of this sort of meaningful journalism that he's surveyed. One other thing I thought was interesting was this little one down here is crowdfunding. So not a whole lot.
What comes under other?
What comes under other? Actually, I have to go. Let's see.
The free rent you get while you're blogging in your mother's basement, right?
Yeah. Sorry, I have to go look that up. Okay, so for this project that Matt and Danny and I have been working on, sort of one of the hypothesis was that if we look at what nonprofit news organizations have done so far in terms of memberships or donations, a lot of what you see if you flip through all of the 51 members of INN and then things that are not INN members like ProPublica and Bay Citizen and whatnot, not a lot of innovation going on. It's mostly just asking for donations. A few people are kind of experimenting with tiered memberships where you get a little bit more if you spend a little bit more.
I talked to because I did do a membership drive last year, I talked to the woman at the Voice of San Diego, because they do pretty active membership drives.
Right.
And she said one important thing was if you were going to do that and you were going to offer benefits, that the benefits you needed to offer were, as weird as this might sound to all of us, things like a chance to have coffee with the staff or the journalists, or if there's speakers coming into town, you get people in for free. She said nobody wants another coffee mug or T-shirt, so don't do that. Yeah.
Yep, that's why I labeled my original one Beyond Pledge Drives and Tote Bags. So nobody wants to go there. Let's see. Let's skip those. So in doing this research with Matt and Danny, we sort of came from the assumption that for a lot of the INN type organizations, the assumption is that you want your content to have as wide an audience as possible. So we want an informed citizenry. We want to aid democracy, and as I added there, we kind of avoid becoming Glenn Beckistan. So pretty much this is like a freemium model that we're looking at applying to membership. So those who can pay can pay for some extra privileges and some of the stuff that Alan was talking about I'll get into. And but meanwhile, the content is free on as many channels as possible. So obviously this doesn't apply to every single member of INN. It might apply to California Watch, but not CIR, for example. So just some quick examples. I'd say the Texas Tribune is probably one of the more innovative ones in terms of nonprofit investigative news, and so they've got a whole bunch of tiers that you can buy into. So like even at the student level, $10 a year, you still get a special discount for all of their events, and they do a lot of events. They're very focused on politics, Texas politics, and so there's lots of get to meet politicians, meet the Speaker of the House, lectures, that sort of thing. And you kind of go up the chain and you get more stuff. So like your $100 a year, you also get a digital subscription to Texas Monthly, which they have an affiliation with.
If you're a diplomat, you don't get anything.
Well, so as you go down, you get everything. So at the $500 a year level, then it's where you start to get the special stuff. There's an annual State of the State cocktail reception with the CEO, Evan Smith, who's a bit of a celebrity in Texas. And let's see, this is, to get to your point, this idea about reserved seating at Texas Tribune events if you pay a certain amount, $1,000 a year. And then you get down to their biggest individual donors, $5,000 a year. Then they will have kind of special events where you'll get to meet newsmakers. Obviously, that one can be a little bit dicey. Some of you may remember the controversy with the Washington Post, where Catherine Graham got into a lot of trouble for
Selling access.
selling access, basically, yeah. But that one's kind of an interesting one. You know, certainly we looked, yep.
Before you move on from Texas Tribune, you didn't mention the crane project that they're doing to also, not to generate money, but to just generate interest and participation on the site?
Sure, it's, I mean, it's not really a
Sorry.
membership thing,
I
it's.
thought that was just to highlight what Texas Tribune, that was one cool thing that they're doing on their site, that they have a cool quiz game. It's not tied to money directly, but it's definitely doing a good job of retaining interest in the site.
Yeah, and
So-
hopefully we'll be experimenting with that here at CU very, very soon.
Do you know how they're doing that membership? Any idea?
Matt, have you come up with any good numbers from
I did
them?
not get any hard numbers from
Because
Texas Tribune, no.
When they started, John, what's his name, the guy who started, John Thornton, who was a major venture capitalist in Texas, he told me this, we were talking with him, said that he basically went around to all the people he made a lot of money for, and they got them to pony up like this, that $2,500 level, they had pretty great return. And then 8 months later, I was at another event, and somebody asked him that, he said the thing pretty much collapsed, because we're not staffing it. We're not paying attention to it. So that, I guess the point I'm making is if you do that kind of thing, you really, it's not, you can't just put it on your website or whatever. You really have to have someone to manage. You know, this stuff works. It's almost a full-time job if you're going to be doing that. And his point was that they really weren't, they hadn't staffed it. Maybe they're doing much better now, but after the initial rush, they really hadn't had much success.
Right, well, I think Matt and Danny and I are still in the middle of this, so I did some of that information I just don't have yet. Let's see, I thought this is yet another example of access to people being a draw. So this is Rocky Mountain PBS, and if you spend at least $100 a month, then you get periodic breakfast meetings with the CEO. So I don't know, Robert, do you do anything like that with your major benefactors where you?
No,
Regularly meet with them?
I mean, again, it's staffing, and it's not something we focus on, it's something we, with our board, we haven't been this engaged, it's not like, this is like this process we're about to really get much better at, I hope.
I mean, seriously, if you're thinking about doing a quarterly event or anything, it's not showing up at the event that's the problem. It's that somebody's got to book a room, pay for the, it's just the logistics of if you're already just trying to run an operation, and to add another major labor-intensive thing like that without somebody to do it for you that you have to then pay, it's just the last straw. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, well, certainly there are some of the entities do take that into account, and they have hired people.
Yeah.
If you've heard of newwest.net,
Mm-hmm.
they actually have a conference business that, last I heard, I think they make more money from that
They've
than they
actually
do.
changed in the last year.
Oh, maybe since Jonathan whoever
Yeah.
left. Yeah.
So when I was at Variety, which is obviously for-profit, we had an event staff, full-time, about 3 people. I think we got up to well north of 100 events a year. The profit margins on events can vary greatly, particularly if you do corporate sponsors, and let's face it, Variety could get some star power occasionally. But you're looking at a 22 to 26, maybe 30% profit margin on an ongoing basis for most events. So if you're going to do that, have its own P&L, have its own staff, because otherwise it's just a giant distraction.
Right.
That was what we-
Right. Well, and earlier today we talked about the importance of maybe bringing in some business people, some marketing people, new business development. So I guess this is another duty that you might want to have to consider for the business folks that you're inevitably going to have to hire.